Okay, we're live now. All right, Zaire, go ahead.
Wait, it says off air.
Okay, all right,
Um,
we are live. Awesome. So, welcome to Great Gatsby Discussion 3. We're going to start off by rereading Martello's question. So, reread the paragraph in Chapter 6, which begins, One autumn night 5 years before, Gatsby's and Daisy's first kiss. Nick narrates this event and says that Gatsby knew that after kissing Daisy, his mind would never romp again like the mind of God. Explain what this means. All right. Let's open it up.
all right. So I got mainly one thing from this, and it was just like the depth of how Gatsby felt for Daisy. He's extremely passionate, and he tells the audience that, like, when he tells the audience that he will never romp with God again, I felt like that was like, he's never going to mess around with his belief or connection to God because he actually gets to kiss Daisy. And if he gets to kiss Daisy, then God must be real.
Mm-hmm.
I almost took it as like, it says like the mind of God. So I almost took it as like, oh no, when Gatsby kissed Daisy, it was almost like he was like living like a god. Like he has the girl of his dreams. He has like this wealth and this money, and he in his mindset he was like a god, and he kind of like never like once he talked about it again, it was almost like he relived that. But the fact that like he's not with Daisy anymore is kind of like he can't like compare anything to it. He can't top it. So you can never like regain that like feeling again.
Wait,
Yeah.
was he rich during that time when he?
No, because that's why he couldn't marry Daisy because his Daisy's family wanted her to marry Tom because he had the money. So it was like he was the fact that he had the potential of being with her. He kind of felt like a god, and then once he kind of redid his entire lifestyle to be with her, it kind of like made him realize like he can't regain this feeling because he's like she's already moved on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I definitely get where both of you are coming from, and I like how you sort of made sort of like because I feel like the mind of God can't be ignored because God I feel like is on such a level, and I when I read it with the context, I almost felt like in his mind he would never be at this level again. He would never reach this sort of height. He would never have this ever again because like this is the girl of his dreams, right? And he is about to kiss her, and it's like after that, like his mind would never romp again like the mind of God. You're never going to experience that again. You're never going to have that special miracle sort of magical moment in a sense. And I sort of felt like, his mind would never romp again like the mind of God. It would never go back. There's nothing else besides sort of her and this moment he has with her.
And I feel like that, like, the narration changed from Nick to Gatsby and Daisy because only those two could vividly like remember something that was like 5 years ago, right? It was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Or 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 years. You're right.
What?
Yeah, you're right. 5 years.
You're right.
So I feel like only like Nick wouldn't be able to retell that because he wasn't there, regardless of whether Gatsby told him about it or not. So I feel like by having like that narration change, the author almost like forced the readers to understand Gatsby's mind and how much he cared for her. So I feel like that narration change was like is important as well.
Yeah, and not only like how he felt for her, but how he still feels for her. Like it shows that like the way that Gatsby described it to him, it was still so vivid. It was like, yeah, it's 5 years ago, but he still remembers it like it was yesterday. So like it's still a clear image in Gatsby's mind, and it still like portrays as like his number one thought almost. Like he can't like let go of it. Like it's so
yeah, that's his like true intention anyway. Like moving closer to her and having these like high class parties and dressing the way he does, and like the way he like talks to Nick, like, oh yeah, I graduated from this university, even though he dropped out after like 2 weeks or something. Like he like holds himself, and we discussed it in the last video how like he almost is unhonest with himself. And I feel like we were talking about how Nick was almost unhonest with himself, but in reality, it's more Gatsby now because he tries to portray himself as something that is completely different than what he is just to be closer with Daisy.
Yeah, it's like he like reinvented himself almost.
Yeah.
Just to be with this one.
I
like,
almost.
Huh?
You can go, Matt.
Oh,
Nothing.
How we discussed last discussion, we were kind of like, yeah, he just throws these big parties and stuff, and like, you know, it's because of his wealth. But now we know that like he's living this American dream that was so like important in the 20s for Daisy, like to catch her attention, and he did all of this stuff for her. So we kind of like answered like our one question, at least in the previous discussion, of like why he was doing all of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I also and trying to bring up sort of tying in of what you both said. I know Nat, you were talking about like Nick's narration and stuff, and how that was also. I think it's important to point out that that was also present in when we talked in our last discussion. We were asked about Nick and why the author transitioned from maybe all this dialogue to all of this this sort of different type of style. And I think it's important to note that whenever we get these intimate moments or these glimpses into the past, it's always Nick narrating them. It's always Nick like breaking it down and really painting the picture for us. As like most of these chapters, the real meat of it is the dialogue to progress the story. But usually near the end, just like on this discussion as well, chapter 6, near the end, it's Nick going into this lengthy sort of thing and really painting the picture. And I feel like that's how the author almost ties up each chapter, giving us little progressives of the story and then tying it in with this sort of style of writing.
Well, I know like before we mentioned like why was Nick narrating it and like why not Gatsby, and I feel like that kind of ties into what you just said. Like with Nick explaining everything, he gets it from Gatsby, but I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like I feel like that answers why Nick is explaining it, because he is able to like firsthand experience Gatsby's like thoughts, and he's able to write it down. And he gets like Daisy's perspective on it, and then Gatsby's perspective, and you can see like the conflict between Tom and Gatsby. Or if it was Gatsby, like I feel like the entire book would be like, "Oh, I love Daisy. I'm going to do this all of this stuff for her."
Yeah.
But with Nick, you see like why, like all of his intentions.
Yeah, I get that.
Do you guys think, since we're talking about Daisy, do you guys think that Gatsby has true intentions for her? Because I know that like it was like when they first, well, not first met, but when they re-met from or through Nick, there was like rain, and it was like a depressing like mood in that setting. Do you guys think that like despite like the weather and like what we've learned before about how that can change what the author is trying to say, do you guys think that he has true intentions, or like so far at least do you think he has like those true intentions for Daisy, that he loves her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think definitely, yeah. But I think because from reading, you see how he is so persistent to try to get her. Like he tries to go through Nick. You know, he tries to. I feel like he almost creates this relationship with Nick so that he can get closer to Daisy indirectly, because you know with the party and everything and how that went. So I think his intentions are true. They're good intentions. They're pure, but then again, there's a difference from him having true intentions to them working out. And I feel like he's sort of blinded in a way.
Yeah, like the theme of like cheating almost with Tom and Myrtle, and like how even knows about it, he's not doing anything about it. And the same thing with now Daisy and Gatsby. Like, even though they're like now like rekindling almost their love, it seems like Nick is refusing to say something to Tom and saying something.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I feel like, and that kind of goes along with the very first quote in the beginning, how like his dad had told him like, you know, people don't grow up with the same things that you do. And Nick, yeah, Nick like describes himself as like a very loyal person. So maybe that is like where his loyalty lies. Like he keeps things to himself and he won't like tell other people anything what the other people are doing.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned like in your question that the weather and like that, and chapter 5 starts out with it raining, and on 81 it starts, and it says it's like blinked into the darkness, but it also ends with raining and like the setting being like dark, and like Nick walks out of Gatsby's house and it's dark and rainy. So I feel like that like foreshadows that whenever Gatsby and Daisy like rekindle and like, you know, get together, like it's always going to be dark, it's always going to be rainy, because like the book we read over the summer explained that weather changes the mood and like the effect. So rain symbolizes like darkness, like not going to work out and this and that, gloomy. So I feel like his love might be true and Daisy's love might be true, but because rain is like involved in that whole situation, reality, I don't think it's going to work out. Like it's never going to be sunny, and it's like it's never going to work out. So they might try to do whatever, his intentions might be there, but that chapter full circles into like, yeah, Daisy's here, we're getting along, this and that, but it's always going to go back to being like gloomy.
Yeah.
Like not a perfect world.
I totally understand that. I didn't think of that at first.
Yeah, because I noticed that like I was like, it keeps like describing like every time Daisy comes around, there's always like a dark like foreshadow, and this in chapter 5 it was just really like popped out to me.
Yeah, it presented itself more because of Gatsby being there as well.
Yeah,
like when they were together.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of like put the 2 and 2 together.
And I feel like that's almost like reality too, of that. He keeps wanting to stop. He keeps wanting to like go back into the past. Sorry, that's my dog who's growling. He keeps wanting to sort of reverberate back into the past as if things are. I feel like there is this theme throughout the book, and just to sort of connect to what you were saying, Mal, of this dream versus reality sort of sense. And I feel like maybe the dream is their intentions, their good intentions, their pure intentions, and however exotic they may be. But the reality is sort of ties to that dark and gloominess that you were just referring to. So I feel like there's definitely an underlying theme where that's present. So
yeah.
On page 91, just to like add on to this, there's a quote and it says, he hadn't once ceased looking at Daisy, and I think he revalued everything in his house according to the measure of response it drew from her well-loved eyes. So like I know I questioned his intentions, but I do feel like the author is really pushing us to believe that Gatsby is in love with Daisy, or at least he's in love with the relationship they had before. And I feel like perhaps he does have true intentions, but like Mallory and you were both saying, it's not what's going to happen. And I feel like it's not what's going to happen. They're not going to be able to be together, whether because of Tom or because of some source that we don't even know of yet.
Do you guys think, because I remember in the last discussion we were talking about how we sort of couldn't get a lot of information because we didn't know a lot about Nick, and we didn't know a lot about Gatsby, and we're sort of questioning who was telling us this story and who the story was about. Well, now we're getting a lot of information on Gatsby and his background and what happened or what he says happened and this and that. and we're sort of getting, maybe we're not getting a lot of information on Nick, but we're seeing his character sort of form with the choices that he's deciding to make and the decisions that he's making to help Gatsby out. So do you think it's made it easier to read? Do you think it's changed any perspectives, point of views, bias?
I think it changed point of views because in chapters like 1, 2, and 3, they mentioned like no one really knew Gatsby and like how he like got to become like this wealthy man, and like they all based it off of rumors. And I think it was in chapter 4. I know, when was it? Chapter 6. I was really off, but he like Nick talks about how like news reporters were coming to like talk to Gatsby and stuff, and to kind of like go over his story. And it basically just said that Gatsby was like a self-made millionaire. Like the rumors were all false. Like he thought that he was involved in crimes and this and that, but he went from like rags to riches. Like he established his own lifestyle. So I feel like the bias that we did have of him like being a mystery and like we didn't really know how like who he was, it kind of showed that like he was just an everyday man that like fell in love with a girl and wanted to like remake himself for this girl. So it showed that like he's not some like person that has no emotion, and his like we mentioned like how his shadow like it can like foreshadow something, but I feel like it just kind of showed that he was unknown at that point in the story, but now he's like a genuine person that was normal and just worked his way up on the scale.
So you as a reader sympathize with him now,
Well,
as like before, because the first few chapters we were talking, we were like, we don't know who this guy is, but now, like Mal, you're saying he's a regular guy now, so I think that maybe that's even intentional.
Yeah, I don't know if I would like yeah, I
yeah,
feel
I was about to say
like
I don't
I feel like
respect
his,
him,
like
but
yeah, I feel like it's just like his story. Like you just learn about him. Like I feel like it could be
Yeah.
intentional, but at the same time, I feel like Fitzgerald is just trying to tell the story of Gatsby. So like you're not lost the entire time,
yeah.
but it's also a way to show how much he loves Daisy.
And the way he got like his money necessarily wasn't like he earned it because he found Cody, it was his name, right?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Um yeah. Um he had died and then he left it to Gatsby. So necessarily it wasn't that that like the more information changed my view on him, because I still feel like he's a very unhonest person, because he lies straight to Nick about getting his college education when he dropped out, and like it doesn't necessarily add up. Maybe he's not lying for a bad reason. Maybe he just wants to get closer to Daisy and this is the only way he thinks he can do it. But it doesn't like I think I still feel that he's unhonest. And I don't think that it like the more information changed it. I think it just enhanced my feeling of
okay.
It like enhanced your feeling towards him and like his background. Like I don't think it was to make you opinionated. I think it was just to tell you who Gatsby really is.
yeah.
And do you think, like, because we are we're learning about Gatsby and his past, and I think it's kind of weird for me personally. I think I started to sympathize with him because who doesn't love a love story, but like even Nick, when Gatsby is telling like his story, even Nick is hesitant. Like, are you sure you did all those things? Are you sure all that happened?
Yeah.
So even, and I'm sort of playing devil's advocate here, even the information that we are given, that we are told, is still can be, in the eyes of the narrator at least, is still circumstantial.
Yeah.
I feel like it goes. You want to go?
No, you're fine.
I just feel like that goes with like the theme of like unhonesty that we're talking about before. Like it just depending on who it is. At first, we thought that maybe Nick was the unhonest one with himself, but now I'm almost thinking that Gatsby is the unhonest one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about Nick?
What about him?
Well, what? Well, I don't know. What are we? Because we're learning a little bit more about his character as we go along, and he just seems to be helping Gatsby out. I don't know why he does it. I don't understand. Like their relationship seems almost. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want to say inorganic, but it just seems like
weird
Gatsby is almost like using Nick to get to Daisy, and Nick is just going
allowing
along
it.
with it,
Yeah.
right? And he knows that he wants to get close to Daisy.
Yeah. Mallory,
Well,
did you?
Oh yeah, I don't want to like interrupt you guys.
Yeah, go.
But I feel like in the first few chapters, the book was entirely about Nick, and I feel like that was just to like introduce the character, because once Gatsby got introduced, the entire few chapters that we read were like solely based off of him.
Yeah.
And Nick was just like a pawn in Gatsby's game to get to Daisy. And it said in the very beginning of chapter 5 that Nick agrees to set up a meeting between Gatsby and Daisy in return for business. Yeah. So, and he thinks it's like even like an illegal business, but he still agrees to it. So I feel like he's helping Gatsby with Daisy in return for business and money.
I didn't. I see what you're saying, because I do remember that.
Yeah.
Like the whole meeting with lunch, and that guy that was a really weird last name. Like it was just like so weird to Nick, but he still, for some reason, agrees to do it and like join it. And I don't know. It's just I keep getting hung up on like the title being The Great Gatsby, and I'm waiting for like that explanation. It was like why Gatsby? You know, why is it told or from Nick, but the title, you know what I mean? It's just
yeah. I think I almost made a connection, and I think I'm because I'm reading the title now, The Great Gatsby. It almost reminds me of like The Great Wizard of Oz. It's not told from the eyes of Oz. Who is Oz? Who is this? Like who is Gatsby? Who's the Great Gatsby? This great magical being or whatever. Or same with Oz, but it's sort of told through someone else. And it's a weird connection, but I feel like some of the elements are similar because we're sort of alluded in the first few chapters to who this guy is. And this book isn't very long, and we're about a little bit more halfway done, or at least halfway through it. And now we're getting to know a little bit of Oz, or the Great Gatsby in this sense.
Yeah. I feel like it won't be revealed until the very end, and once it is, it's going to be more opinionated, because it's like some people might view the Gatsby already as like the Great Gatsby. Like, he's this wealthy man, he once had Daisy, he's redoing his entire lifestyle for her, like he's this great person that's willing to change for this girl. But other people are skeptical, kind of like how we are, like, but he's still like a mystery. Like, why is he doing all of this stuff for a girl who already has a husband, already established a life? So I feel like if it does get revealed towards the end, it's never going to be like a clear, yes or no. It's going to be more an opinionated like question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to look at his actions throughout. Like he's, like you were saying, Matt, like why does he continue to go after Daisy, although he knows the social class difference, he knows that she's, he knows all these things, and there's like seems to be so many symbols and signs that point out, dude, it's not happening, I'm sorry. But he keeps doing it, and I think what's so interesting is it looks like, or at least it feels like to me, that he just thinks he can throw money at the situation and it'll just somehow solve itself, and money will fix it. And it's like, it's not the case.
What?
Yeah.
I just said, like, he thinks his money can buy love, but it's not.
I feel like he hopes so much for like what they used to have, and by throwing money at it, it's just going to make it worse, because Daisy fell in love with him because he was, well, not because, but when he was that poor like worker, he wasn't rich. So I feel like by throwing money at it, it might even like turn her off in a way. Like she doesn't,
Yeah.
but she does cry. I remember the one he showed her like clothes that he had or something, and then she started crying because they were like such great clothes, and I was so I don't know. I mean, I do get what you're saying, like by throwing money at it, it's not gonna work, maybe in long term, but as far as short term, I feel like she's just so impressed with seeing him again and like finding out that he's, this he has great clothes and he has a huge
Yeah.
house and all that stuff.
I think what's also important is that Mal, you're saying he's trying to buy love, and that he'll reach the realization where he knows he can't do that. Maybe it's, and this is just me. Maybe it's not. He's trying to buy love because I think he knows that she has feelings for him, and that he has feelings for her. But he's trying to do his best to buy back time
Yeah.
and
Yeah, definitely.
and lost time, trying to go back and say, I have all of this. Listen, just think of like he's trying to buy back time. And I think what I'm sort of excited for in the next few chapters is maybe when we see him come to this road, and I don't know how it's going to happen, whether it's going to be Nick to explain it to him, or maybe it's going to be like a self thing, where he realizes that I'm sorry, you cannot buy everything.
Yeah.
Time especially. And
Well,
too much time has went by.
are you done? I don't want to cut you off. Are you good? Okay.
Okay.
Because you kept mentioning time, and in chapter 5, he again it's raining, and Nick invites, or they plan to meet with Nick, Gatsby, and Daisy, and Gatsby ends up being like super late. He disappears. He comes back, and he knocks over a clock. And I feel like the clock is a symbol for the time you just talked or spoke of, because he didn't, like, he could have knocked over any object, and he knocked over a clock, and which obviously represents time. So for him to knock over the clock, it's like he's, his time's out the door. Like he's trying to recreate something. Like he's trying to go back in time with this girl, and the clock just symbolizes that, like, if you do this, like, it's just gonna fall back again. Like it's not gonna work. It's like he's gonna knock it over. He can't create something that's already happened in the past. And I feel like he realizes that, but he doesn't want to admit it. So he's gonna use his money to help, like, bring back what they had.
Almost recreate it.
And
Yeah.
do you
At least try to.
do you think like I know that we're saying that the money does have a big part in it, but do you think that like Tom might also be that force that like keeps them separated and keeps them from like being together? Because multiple times throughout, Tom is suspicious, but he doesn't know for sure what's happening. All he knows is that
Yeah.
they hang out alone a lot, and he does not like that, which I find is ironic because he's out with other women and
Yeah, right?
no problem with it. But do you guys think that Tom might be that force that also drives them apart?
Go ahead.
You can go. All right. Well, I think so. I think that Tom is probably, but I feel like he's more of a literal, like he is the guy that, like, hey, no, like he's the actual literal, I guess, in Gatsby's mind, his sort of own antagonist. But I feel like if you step back and look at the bigger picture, that there's a much larger gap, and that is the time thing. And I feel that I don't think Tom represents time. I just think he is more of a
hurdle, like
direct.
an obstacle almost. Like
Yeah, you have to put an obstacle in the way.
yeah.
So there's almost two gaps. Tom is one obstacle, but a much larger and a much overarching obstacle is that gap of time.
Are you done? I want to.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you want to say a last point because we're almost at time?
I said what I wanted to say.
All right.
I
Okay.
would say that, like, Tom like how kind of you said, like he's like the little reason. Like in that time, people they didn't want to get divorced, and you know her parents rearranged the wedding. They picked who she needed to go like to marry, so it was very against that society to get a divorce. But so he's the obstacle, like you said, like he's the reason why they can't be together. Like she can't divorce this man, even though basically now they're kind of already cheating on each other, and they kind of already both know about it. But it was so like against society to do that it wouldn't even been like, I mean, yeah, they probably thought about it, but I don't think they would ever like act upon it, at least right now.
Yeah, I agree. All right.
I concur.
All right, so we're done.